Hello and welcome to LionWing Talks, a weekly show where we discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm Bradley Hailstorm, your host and also the president and founder of LionWing. This is episode 18. That means we've been doing this for a while. And as always, lots of questions tonight from the community. And as always, all of those questions came in like the last 12 hours. So woke up this morning and was like, all right, so like 3 questions. This one's going to be a short one tonight. And then got busy doing some stuff today. A lot of stuff happening with preparation for future Kickstarters, taking care of Testament stuff, getting other things prepped for release. And so I ended up looking at the Discord and I'm like, okay, 20 questions all of a sudden. I don't know where that came from, but here we are, 20 questions later. I think it's actually like 19 questions. I didn't really get a chance to look at these tonight. Like I have mentioned before, I don't like to look at the questions too much, but typically I give them just like a quick once over to see like is this something I want to answer on air or not? Tonight it was more of a, let me just copy and paste into my show notes and hope I got like questions that I can answer on the air and I don't have any awkward moments. So, about 20 questions to go through. Then we're going to hit some project updates. We've got plenty of project updates tonight. I don't think the updates are as exciting as last week's when we had quite a bit to go through, but there's still a lot of meat on that bone tonight. So we're going to do that. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much for taking your time to join us on this show. This is our weekly flagship show. We have a sister show that happens on Mondays at 9 p.m., although it hasn't happened for the past 2 weeks, but that show is called LionWing Plays, and that is where we, the LionWing team, play LionWing games. I'll be talking about what's new, or what will be new for LionWing Plays in the coming future, because we've got some updates there as well. But this is our main show, and it's been running since the first week of Embryo Machine's Kickstarter campaign, which was the very beginning of February. So I love doing the show, and I'm glad that you all join me each week. I'm glad to see our returning folks. I'm glad to see some fresh faces as well. That's always awesome. I know we've had a lot of fresh faces in the Discord server lately, so maybe some of those folks are tuning in as well. In fact, I think I see some of those folks in the chat right now. Anyway, we have a format for the show, if this is your first time catching us, where I go through our community submitted questions, our listener questions, and then we'll move into some project updates, and I'll go through each of our projects, provide updates where I can, and then we'll close out the show. We tend to go about an hour and 15 minutes. The past couple of weeks, we've hit 2 hours. I'm not going 2 hours tonight. I said I wasn't going to go 2 hours last week, and then I went 2 hours. Seriously, I'm not going 2 hours tonight. I'm making a promise and a commitment to a sub 2 hour show this evening. I'm going to try to hover around that hour and 15 minute mark. We'll see if I make it. I say that often. I think I've been saying that since episode 1, and I rarely hit it. Okay. So someone in the chat said, ooh, sounds like Wild Arms. I'm guessing you're talking about the opening theme. And yeah, so it's not Wild Arms, though I love seeing some Wild Arms representation in the chat. Thanks, Jake. You don't hear about Wild Arms talked about much at all these days, which is truly unfortunate. Fantastic series. But it's not from Wild Arms as much as I wish it were. It is from one of our own games. And that is actually a question in our community submitted questions. And I'll get to that. So hang tight. It is not Wild Arms though. There is, speaking of Wild Arms, Tangent, I'll do those from time to time. There is a really rad, unofficial Wild Arms tabletop role-playing game in Japan that is wildly good. I would love to be able to talk with that designer and then also talk with Sony about allowing that designer to make that commercial and then talking with that designer about making that commercial. That would be a dream project of mine. As someone who loves Wild Arms, that would be fantastic. Okay, enough rambling about Wild Arms. Let's get to these questions. Question 1, how many late pledges do you get compared to live Kickstarter backers? Personally, I've only late pledged, I've only late pledged, and Midnight Saga will be my first live Kickstarter. So, hey Sid, thanks for joining us. So most of the time, you're not going to get as many late pledges as you will live backers. That's just the way it goes. But I can't really say how many we've got compared to what we had when the campaign was live. Obviously, you're going to get a disproportionate amount of folks backing your project when it's live compared to those who are going to catch it once the campaign's wrapped up. There's a certain level of energy, there's momentum, there's buyer psychology, there's excitement and hype around something that's live. You feel like you're a part of that process. Late pledging, which I do all the time, there's less of that, which is why we try to make our late pledging exciting as well, which is why we offer all the same rewards that you would get if you pledged live. Obviously, we want people to pledge live because that's going to decide if the game gets printed or not. So we need live. We need live backers, but not everyone's going to find out about our stuff when it's live. We run short campaigns too. We're not running like a 30-day campaign or a 35-day campaign. We did that for our first campaign. That was a fucking nightmare. But we do 16-day campaigns. So it's unlikely you're going to reach the whole of your audience in 16 days. So yeah, you get way more people live, but we've had, and it sort of depends on the campaign, let me just say, but we've had a good amount of people show up for late pledges. Gun and Gun, a lot of late pledges. Wild Hunt Festival, a lot of late pledges. In fact, Wild Hunt Festival is probably the game that's gotten the most late pledges out of all of our projects. Embryo Machine has picked up quite a bit in terms of late pledges, more than I was anticipating, to be honest. I figured Embryo Machine's primary audience would be while the campaign was live. And like I said, that's the case for all of our Kickstarters, but I wasn't expecting as many people to late pledge to Embryo Machine as the other games, which has been super cool to see. And I'm very, very appreciative of that. And we still got a ways to go. We're actually going to be putting forth probably a larger marketing push for late pledging to Embryo Machine than we did with Gun and Gun and Wild Hunt Festival, just because we have seen kind of like this out of nowhere uptick in people late pledging to Embryo Machine. So yeah, in terms of numbers though, I couldn't really give you that without actually like looking through my spreadsheet and crunching that data, which I'm not going to do right now. So Jake said, sadly didn't find out about Embryo or Wild Hunt Festival until after the campaigns. Yeah, Jake, I mean, that's not uncommon. We've had plenty of people, especially lately, joining the Discord server saying like, hey, I just found out about you guys and I just late pledged every project that I could have you on. It's like, hey, that's awesome. And it's unrealistic to think that everyone's going to know about us while a campaign is live. And as a relatively young company, yeah, we've been around since 2018, but 2020 was kind of like our first real start. It's pretty typical and expected that people would still be finding us. In fact, we hope that people continue to find us and those numbers of people searching us out or finding us continue to grow. So there you have it. Question 2, if you had to pick a Hailstorm song to play as an intro to LionWing Talks or LionWing Plays, what would it be? So Hailstorm is a band, and I would pick exactly none of their songs. Question 3, how was your Memorial Weekend? It was good. It was lots of family stuff. Everyone in my family now is fully vaccinated, so lots of gatherings. Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It was a very family-oriented long weekend for the Hailstorm house, that's for certain, which is always cool because my brother's kids are right around the same age as my wife and I's kids. So getting the kids together to play is always super fun to watch. And of course, my parents love to see that kind of thing. Sin in the chat said, sounds like you just described my weekend. Yeah, Sin, that's why when you and Beans reached out to me, I think it was on Monday, like, hey, are we doing LionWing Plays? Because I got like family stuff. That's why I was like, yeah, no, don't worry about LionWing Plays. Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of in that same boat too, feeling pretty safe, pretty comfortable to go and hang out in larger groups than they would have just a couple months ago. So people took advantage of that. Now here in Cincinnati, the weather was terrible over the weekend. It didn't get nice until Monday, but it was terrible. It was cold. I mean, like in the 50s. I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. The planet's dying. That's what's happening. Okay. So question 4, a few episodes ago, I'm assuming that's supposed to say, you said your favorite Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy 12. What are your top 5 favorite Final Fantasies? Oh, I hate questions like this. I would say so. Number one is 12, preferably the zodiac age, and then I would say probably 10, 4, 6, and oh gosh, and then it's like a two-way tie between 9 and 8. Now I know people will hear Final Fantasy 8 cracking my top 5 and raise an eyebrow, like, are you? Would you like the opportunity to revise your answer, Bradley? And to that, I would say no. I would not. I like Final Fantasy 8. I will not apologize for it. It took a lot of risks. It took a lot of risks with gameplay, with setting, with characters. Not everything paid off, but I think by and large, for me, it did. Like, it came out better off for it. And having to follow up Final Fantasy VII in that era of gaming is not something that I would have wanted to try to tackle. I would not have wanted to be part of, well, then Squaresoft, having to try to unseat Final Fantasy VII as the biggest and best Final Fantasy, but also the biggest and best RPG. So Final Fantasy VIII was kind of destined to fail. No matter what they did, they could have taken the safest approach ever. 9 could have been in 8's place, and it still would have been looked at poorly. Perhaps maybe not in retrospect, but at the time, I think a lot of people shit on 8 because they just wanted more Final Fantasy VII. I think people wanted more Final Fantasy VII for like 15 years. I think they wanted Final Fantasy VII to be every JRPG release up until like 2010, and then it and then it kind of waned a little bit, and here we are again doing the whole Final Fantasy VII thing again. Anyway, so I think that would probably be my answer. Catch me on a certain day, I might like swap out something. I don't know. I'm not counting either MMOs because I have a lot of nostalgia for Final Fantasy 11 because despite the fact that Phantasy Star Online was my first MMO, Final Fantasy 11 was the one that I probably played the longest, and of course Final Fantasy 14 is, in my opinion, the best running MMORPG on the market right now. Talk about a comeback story. I mean, a comeback story for the ages, right? Thanks Yoshi P for that. So yes, I will be playing New Genesis. I will certainly be playing New Genesis. You don't see it on the other side of my shelf here, but I have a whole row dedicated to Phantasy Star because it is one of my favorite series. And PSO2, pretty bloated. Not super enjoyable. Hitting the West about 10 years after it came out originally in Japan. So when we got it last year, it was cool. I was really excited. I'm glad Microsoft took up the localization on it, even if I think they kind of came up short on that localization effort. It was still cool to have the game, but you could tell the game was 10 years old, graphically, gameplay wise. I mean, it's just, the game is like menus upon menus upon menus. It's not super great. So having sort of a soft reboot in New Genesis is really exciting to me. I have specifically chosen not to play the closed beta or the open beta of New Genesis. So I'm going into launch next week, completely clean slate. I've done a lot of watching. I've done a lot of reading, but I did not want my first time playing New Genesis to be in a beta because that's how much I like PSO. I made the mistake of playing PSO2 through various proxy means 5 or 6 years ago, and then playing it again last year when it officially released kind of took the magic away from that. So I didn't want that same thing to happen with New Genesis, and said to myself last month, I'm just going to wait. Release is around the corner. So I'm really excited. All right. Question 5. Do you have any games you love but can't convince anyone to play with you? Recently Xenoshift. I was trying to get someone into playing, and they're like, dude, I'm not playing this. And I'm like, you should, dude. You should. And they said, nah, dude, I'm not. I said, okay. But there have been plenty of games in the past that I've been super into that I can't get other people into. That happens all the time, but Xenoshift is just one that immediately comes to mind because it was recent. What's the release calendar looking like for 2022 for LionWing? It's looking pretty good. We got a lot of cool stuff lined up. Some returning series and some new series and some stuff you've probably seen around the internet as of late. Yeah, we got some cool stuff lined up. Mox in the chat said, finally got Xenoshift and I love it. I'm sorry people won't play with you, Rip. Yeah, I'm sorry as well. It's fantastic. It really is. I love the aesthetic. Gosh, I love the aesthetic. Yes, Xenoship looks dope because it is dope, Frank. It is. Question 7. And since you've talked about your love of Summoner Wars, have you bought the new edition yet? I have, and it's right there on that shelf. I have not cracked it open yet. I am not in love with the new art style, but I understand when you're returning to a game and doing sort of a relaunch. You want it to feel fresh, and you want to update it for the modern era. And I understand that a lot of people thought the original Summoner Wars art was a little generic. I never thought it was generic. Maybe the first original four, factions, the orcs, the elves, the dwarves, and I think the other one was like I can't remember I just always called them the sewer rats, but they were a little generic. I think as the game expanded and more content was added to it, they sort of allowed themselves to be more creative with the aesthetic and the art approach to that game. And so getting factions like the Benders, I think, really showed what they were willing to do with that universe, and that it wasn't just this generic high fantasy type setting with these generic high fantasy type characters. So I'm not as down on the original art style as a lot of people are. So I don't love the new look because I do like the original, but it's not bad at all. It's extra cartoony. I was listening to the latest episode of Dicebreaker's podcast, and I think they were saying the same thing, that it's pretty cartoony, and I would definitely agree. It's pretty cartoony, but it's pretty, it's clean, it's imaginative, which I like. And again, like if you're going to re-release something, you want it to feel fresh, and that's a great way to do it, even if I don't necessarily agree with the aesthetic choices they made. Fern, thanks for joining us. Ben, thanks for joining us. Yes, I was just talking about Summoner Wars. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of Summoner Wars because of 2.0. I'm excited about the browser-based online component, which is super cool. They had an app version of the original Summoner Wars that I think Playdeck developed, and it was pretty good. But that was in like not the early days, but the earlier days of like App Store games. And so it was a little limited. It became a little broken. I didn't necessarily like the model they were using. I like the current model a lot. I like that you can play it on any browser. I like Plaid Hat in general. I really think they're great. And Summoner Wars is one of my favorite games of all time. So, yay, Summoner Wars 2.0. Okay. Question 8, I believe. Yes, Testament looks to have the too many cooks in the kitchen kind of issue when it came to errors. Yes, I talked about too many cooks in the kitchen in last week's show, if you missed that one. With Crotty having LionWing as the only quote-unquote cook, if there were to be issues when the game ships, what would you imagine those being? And could you compare how the process of addressing them was different, or how it would be different than was the case in Testament? Yeah, so lots to unpack there. Too many cooks in the kitchen for Testament, absolutely. I'm glad Japanime put out that update today. We also updated the FAQ over on BGG, on the game's BGG page. So check that out if you haven't had an opportunity. I would like to say that someone suggested in the chat a very fantastic idea, and that was to create an errata channel, which I'm actually going to create an errata category and then kind of list each game under that, because there's always errata in this industry. Sometimes you have a lot of errata, sometimes you have very little. You look at Testament, it's got I think we've got sub 10 cards that'll need reprints, and then clarifications and FAQ stuff that I don't necessarily know if we'll like put those on the card. We'll just leave those living in the FAQ, or we might deliver those Q&As in another physical form. I'm not really sure. I'll talk about that during the Testament update. So some projects you'll have a good amount of that stuff, and then you look at something like Sinome, which had very, very, very little errata. I think like one thing, actually. And that was more of an FAQ thing. So still, even with that being said, you always hope that you don't have any errata. It's kind of unrealistic. but you're always aiming for that. You don't want to be the company that aims for, oh, let's just have a little errata. Like, that's not the way to do it. You always aim for a 0 errata, and then that way you minimize your risk of actually having a lot. I think it's a great idea to build that into the Discord, but I'm going to take it one step further. I'll do an entire category, and then I'll have each game under that. So that's how I'm going to handle that. I'll talk more about Testament during the update. Okay, getting back to your question. So yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen for Testament, with Karate only having one cook. If there were to be any issues, what would they be? I don't know. So Karate, we were already... Okay, so Testament and Karate... Whoops. Sorry about that if you're listening to that on just audio. That was me hitting the mic. Karate and Testament occupy the same genre space, but how they execute on that genre, very, very, very different, right? Also, the heaviness of the two games are very different. Like, Testament is a dense game. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of components, literally and figuratively. Testament, there are a lot of places for things to go wrong, or there are a lot of areas for there to be ambiguities in rules or what have you, because there are so many interacting elements. Wild Hunt Festival isn't really that. Wild Hunt Festival is a very, very, very light game, both in terms of mechanics, but also components. So if issues were to crop up in Wild Hunt Festival, they would be very different issues, and they would be on a smaller scale because the game's on a smaller scale. But also, by the time we got to Wild Hunt Festival, we were already refining our process. We had worked on Testament for so long. We knew like what worked with us as a team and what didn't work with us as a team. We mostly had the same team working on Wild Hunt Festival as we did with Testament. The only difference being we felt far more proficient, efficient, and effective with Wild Hunt Festival just because of the lessons we had learned in Testament. And this was long before whatever's happened with Testament now. By the time we got to the end of Testament, we were like, okay, yeah, we got a rhythm. We found our rhythm eventually. Now we got to, go back and we got to make some corrections now that we really have figured out how to work as a team. And that was fine. But Wild Hunt Festival, we brought that knowledge to that game already. I would say we didn't really fully find our stride until... fully, probably Embryo Machine. I think Embryo Machine is actually our tightest game. But each game we've refined our process. And the process was already being refined when we started working on Wild Hunt Festival. So Wild Hunt Festival, there's just a lot less to fuck up. Okay? There just is. And at the same time, let me amend my previous statement. There are some areas where you can fuck up less in Wild Hunt Festival just based on what the game is and what it includes. And then there are other areas where it's way easier to fuck up. So for instance, if there were to be any issues with Wild Hunt Festival, my guess is they would be not like rules ambiguities, not like, okay, well, this doesn't fully state how this card would work in this scenario or in this like really outlier scenario or this edge case. We're not going to run into any of that with Wild Hunt Festival just because how it approaches its gameplay. Where we would run into issues with Wild Hunt Festival is actually just like in common like grammatical stuff. So we added the quest log and the character booklet to the game via the Kickstarter. And both of those things included a ton of text. I mean, we're not talking like Madara levels of text. It's not like a tome, a 400 plus page tome of text, but it's still a lot of text. There's a lot of written words in both of those booklets. And so experience tells me that the more writing you have, the more likely you are to encounter a punctuation error, a spelling error, a syntax error, a tense error, what have you. So if we ran into any issues in Wild Hunt Festival, it would be in that area. Now, I will say though, we had a pretty good proofreading process for Wild Hunt Festival's production, especially when it came to the booklets. There were 3 of us who looked at that booklet. So I was the primary writer on all of those things. I mean, our translator, let me back up. The quest log for Wild Hunt Festival was already written by Ramos-san, and then we translated it, and then I edited it. So like Eli is my rules editor. He's done the rules on every LionWing game so far. And then if I do editing on rule stuff, it's just like cleanup stuff. But when it came to the lore of both Testament and Wild Hunt Festival, that's where I really got involved. It wasn't until Gun and Gun where I got involved in the actual like rules writing. But with Wild Hunt Festival, I edited all of the prose in the quest log because those were translated. But with the character booklet, there was nothing to translate. Ramasan just gave me like the key points of each character's backstory, sort of like in list form, and then I had to create the actual prose to that. So I wrote the prose there, but I then had two other people look at those prose, those being Eli, who is an editor by trade, mostly focuses on rule stuff, but is an editor by trade, which means he can edit anything. And then also Winota, who at that point was volunteering to proofread Wild Hunt Festival stuff because she was just a backer of Wild Hunt Festival. She wasn't even on the LionWing team at that point. But she was like, hey, I'll help proofread. I think I sent out like a call to action, like, hey, I need a proofreader. And she hit me up. So if we encountered an error with Wild Hunt Festival, it would probably be there, which is, I would much rather have that type of error than Testament errors. But, an error is an error, and you always aim to not have any. Wild Hunt Festival feels pretty tight. It feels like a tight game when it comes to production, when it comes to editing and all of that. So I'm very excited, and I'm very excited to show off Wild Hunt Festival because it does feel like a very polished product, and I'm very hopeful about it as well, that it'll turn out, that people will find it to be as interesting and as exciting and as good as we did. The second part of your question, like I said, a lot to unpack here. Could you compare how the process of addressing them would be different in the case compared to Testament? So the process is, I don't know if it would necessarily be different, other than Ramo-san, who is the game designer, is way, way, way more accessible than Kuro is. And it's just faster to respond. So during the campaign, I would talk to Ramo-san like sometimes upwards of like 4 times a day. With Kuro, sometimes I would talk to Kuro like 1 time a month. So very different approachability, very different ability to be able to get in contact with them. And I'm not saying I could only talk to Kuro seldomly as a way to like say like, oh, I should have been more involved. That's not it at all. It's just he had all sorts of stuff going on, right? And I knew that going into the project. I knew I was not going to have easy access to him. And most of the time when I was wanting to talk with Kuro, I would go through Manifest Destiny's representative, Simon or Zimian, and they would talk to him for me and then get back to me, which also took a while. But Ramo-san, because Ramo-san was bilingual and because he was very, very, very involved in helping out with the production of Wild Hunt Festival's English release, he was like ready and willing and able to like engage in any conversation that I wanted to engage in, from trivial stuff to more intense stuff as it relates to gameplay additions and that kind of thing. So for that reason, also, Wild Hunt Festival is tighter. So it's amazing what kind of product you have when you have clearer, quicker, and better access to a designer. And when you don't have to go through another person, a middle person. So I think that part of how we addressed issues with Wild Hunt Festival was very different than Testament, which I think is also asked in another question. It might be the next one right here. So let's talk about question 9. For LionWing projects, what does the localization entail across multiple projects? As in, do you translate, edit, redesign all elements in the project? Or might you hand off translation to another entity, but then handle the editing, redesigning components, etc.? It sort of depends on the project. So most of the time, when we can handle the translation in-house, I will always prefer to do that. But that is not always the case. So Sinome, we did it all ourselves. Testament, we did not. You look at how the two came out in terms of like editing wise, and you have to wonder, objectively, one has better translation and editing than the other. So anytime that I can handle anything in-house, I think that always just creates a more cohesive final product. However, there are times, I'm thinking of Embryo Machine and Gun and Gun specifically, when the translation is handled externally, not by my team. But in the case of both Gun and Gun and Embryo Machine, the translation was handled by the design team, which is always awesome. But of course, since you're not the translator, you still have to ask a lot of questions in, because you don't learn the product as intimately as you would have had to if you were the one translating in the first place. So, that being said, typically, and also in an ideal world, we will translate, we will edit, and we will redesign ourselves. Redesign in terms of like visual presentation. We don't do any redesign of gameplay mechanics. We don't do any designing of additional content. That always goes to the designer. They know their product best. I don't want to get into that area just yet. And with having awesome companies on board like Keep Dry and Cosaic and Liner Note and Manifest Destiny, I mean, they've been very, and MR Entertainment for Sinome, they've all been very willing to sort of play ball and say, all right, you need additional stuff designed for this game? Cool. Let's roll up our sleeves and we'll get to it. Just tell us what you need. And then I say, okay, we need another character. We need another boss, or we need another quest, or we need items, or we need this brand new mode called EX mode, and you have to create that from scratch. Everyone's been very willing to jump on board. So the designing of gameplay elements, mechanics, modes will always be handled, if possible, by the original design team. And most designers prefer it that way. Anyway, they don't want you tinkering with their shit, and I understand. Okay, question 10. I imagine if something would come up with Wild Hunt Festival or Gun and Gun, you would touch base with your QA and then the Japanese designer, if it was not a printing error, to work something out, right? Yeah, so, some of the issues with Testament are out of our hands, are out of Japanime's hands, and are out of Manifest Destiny's hands. They were actual printing error issues. But the stuff that wasn't printing error issues, yeah, that's where it got difficult with Testament, having so many players involved. With Wild Hunt Festival and Gun, because we work so closely with the original design team, it is very easy just to drop them a message through email or Discord, like, hey, like when we were localizing both games constantly. I mean, I think Ramasan and Ken, I mean, I'm sure at times they wanted to kill me because I was asking so many questions as we were going through and translating in the case of Wild Hunt Festival's part, or editing the translation on the part of Gun and Gun. But like, I would rather ask 1,000 questions and get all those answers up front and like annoy the shit out of someone early on than have to go back to them little bit by little bit by little bit over a long period of time because I didn't ask those questions in the first place. So I'd rather just front load it all and ask all my questions right away, and also tell them right away before we get started, like, hey, I'm about to be annoying as hell because I'm going to ask you so many questions, but it's to ensure we produce the best product. So if something were to come up with either one of those games, then it would be, a case of bringing in the QA and then also bringing in specifically Ken on Gun and Gun and then Ramo on Wild Hunt Festival. And it would be a pretty quick process, a pretty seamless process. Testament, the process is a little slower because you're dealing with so many parties, and we're not the primary publisher. And so we can give back answers to questions that people have, but in terms of like making right a situation with reprints or whatever, that's unfortunately that's not on us. Now fortunately Japanime always does right by the customer in these situations, so I don't worry about that, but it is just a slower process because you got more entities involved, and you got big entities involved like Japanime. So okay, less serious question. This is one of the more random ones we've gotten. And this is even coming from Bit, who usually asks random questions. But here we go. Question 11 is, what's your favorite crime? The one where I don't get caught. What's what's your favorite board game expansion? I don't know this one. I mean, I guess maybe Skirmish Wars Blitz. I really liked that expansion. Let me see something. Yeah, I mean Skirmish Wars Blitz, but so okay, yeah. So I really liked Anima Beyond Good and Evil, which I don't know if anyone has even played Anima. It was a game that came out in 2006 from Fantasy Flight, but it was very JRPG inspired, despite being like a competitive game. It was very JRPG inspired, where you like went to towns, you built up a party, you went on missions, fought baddies, tried to be the one to kill the final boss before anyone else does, etc., etc. Amazing game. The first game, Shadow of Omega, one of my probably in my top 10 favorite tabletop games. At least when it comes to like board games / card games, I'm not including tabletop RPGs here, but probably in the top 10. And so its first expansion, it had two expansions. Beyond Good and Evil, I think, is probably my favorite expansion. I don't know. It's probably between that and Skirmish Wars Blitz. That's probably it. Okay. Question 13. You mentioned last episode that crowdfunding isn't liked by some creators in Japan. Would you ever consider bringing something to market via non-Kickstarter, or would not being able to go to Kickstarter route be a deal breaker? No, it's not a deal breaker at all. We got something in the process that will not be a Kickstarter project. It's just too small. There's not enough content there to justify a Kickstarter, et cetera, et cetera. But as a new company, with at this point the only capital we have is what we have made off Kickstarters, and that's after our royalties, that's after the game's been printed, that's after taxes, that's after shipping, because we always undercharge for shipping on our Kickstarter campaign. So we're always eating a cost for shipping, anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000 typically is what we're eating in shipping. So you can always subtract $8,000, $12,000, $15,000 off of what we make, just assuming that we're going to pay that back because we undercharge people for shipping. So the only capital that we have has come from our Kickstarter campaigns. So when you're operating off of not a ton of capital, crowdfunding is kind of like the only real way that you can continue to produce games on a regular schedule. The game that we have that's non-Kickstarter is a small game, and so its print run is small, and that means the whole endeavor from localization, production, printing, and shipping from start to finish is pretty meager. And so that was fine to do on our own, pulling from our revenue that we've earned through Kickstarter. But at this point in time, I can't do that a whole lot, and I certainly can't do it with big games. We're just not there. Some people come into the scene and they either have startup capital, because either a couple people have thrown in and created the company together, and so everyone's pooled, money from wherever. They come from a career where they were able to have a nice nest egg that they could spend on this, or they already have some other means of external funding that they came into, or you have people that come in, they launch Kickstarter, their first one or their second or the third one, and it's a huge success, and they make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, and then and then they're set up. That's it. They're good for so long as they don't mismanage their funds, and so long as they don't do customers wrong, and so long as they are able to continue to produce moderately successful games, they can be a company for however long they want. We don't have that option. We're a niche company. We are funded from my own personal savings account as a social worker. If you know anything about social workers, we don't make any money. So there is no viable means to be able to produce multiple non-Kickstarter projects. This LionWing was born out of a labor of love. And so everything, even up until this point, although we've had some successful Kickstarters, It's not like I'm like bathing in dollar bills because we've got so many of them to go around. That's just not the case. And so I have to be very strategic about how we do things. With every Kickstarter, that there's something big on the line, because it's not like our margin of error is super wide. It's actually quite narrow. LionWing can't really fuck up too many times. So that's a little like inside baseball that I don't even know if people want to hear about, but that's the reality of it. Dark Sakura in the chat, sorry, I haven't checked the chat, said, you've played all 3 animas. Fantastic, because like you're like the only person outside of my 3 friends who I would always make play the game who actually knows and apparently owns the game as well. So I love you already, Dark Sakura. Fun game to take on the road. Yeah, fun game to take on the road. Easy to take on the road too, right? I mean, the box is like yay long, like that thick. Super transportable game. I love me some anima. Talk about an opportunity to re-release something. Whew, what I would do to be able to do that. All right. Question 14. Do you read light novels? And if so, what's your favorite? Series-wise, Grimgar. I think I've talked about Grimgar before. I'm a Grimgar stan. So Grimgar, in terms of series, I recently read Restaurant to Another World, which was fantastic. I think I got that for Christmas. I think my wife got that for me. That was excellent. Question 15, are you still pulling 3 a.m. work nights? If you've tuned into past episodes, you know that at one point I said, it was either the last episode or the episode before that, that for Testament, I was still working my 50-hour-a-week social work job. So for Testament, I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd spend time with my family, eat dinner, play with my kid. At that time, we only had one. I'd give him a bath, get him ready for bed, put him to bed, and I'd immediately come downstairs to the basement and I'd work on Testament until like 3 a.m. And then I'd get up at 6 a.m. and my day would start all over again. Get my kid ready for daycare, take him to daycare, drop him off, go to work, come home, eat dinner, play with my kid, put him in bath, get him a bath, get him ready for bed, put him in bed, go downstairs, work on Testament over and over and over and over and over for well over a year. So that was a crazy time. I'm no longer doing that, thankfully. And I can't do that now that I have 2 kids. It is not possible. It's not feasible. Yeah. So no more 3 a.m. work nights for me right now. I still do work till most nights, probably 12:30, sometimes 1, but it's not 3. Cynthia in the chat said, I actually did not like the Grimgar anime. You and most everyone else. I thought it was good. I was disappointed that there was a season 2. There wasn't a season 2, but that anime was mostly there to get people into the light novels. So, but yeah, I don't think most people like that anime. Is that 2 different Switches on the top shelf? No, it is the Monster Hunter Rise Switch and then just the Monster Hunter Rise like deluxe controller. Let's see here. Question 16. What's the opening song for LionWing Talks? That is a song from one of our own games. It's from the Cradia Wild Hunt Festival soundtrack. I think it's track 4, called Bound by Steel. What's your... also kind of random, but also this is a fun question. What's your favorite plot twist of all time? So this is one of those questions I didn't really have a chance to think about. I mean, Cloud's memories. I get so worried about like spoiling stuff, even if I'm going to be talking about games that are years old. But the whole thing with Cloud's memories in the original Final Fantasy VII, I'll just say that I thought that was pretty shocking. I didn't see that coming. I don't think anyone did, because it was one of those plot twists that they did absolutely, no real groundwork to lay to where you would even be thinking about that, and then they revealed it. In which some people would say that's a great plot twist. And I would say, actually, it's probably a bad plot twist, because, like, if you can't ever see the plot twist coming because the writer or the creator has not really given you anything to even think about that. It's not really a plot twist then. It's just kind of like a plot development. But I did think that was pretty cool, at least when it came out. Final Fantasy VII came out when I was like 12 or 13 or something. So at the time I was like, oh, wow, that was really cool. It stuck with me. I don't know if it holds up today, but pick a plot twist from Final Fantasy X. There's 4 that immediately come to mind. I thought the nuclear bomb going off in Modern Warfare was that one caught me by surprise. I did not expect that. I figured that you as the player would kind of save the day, and you most definitely did not save the day. So I thought that was pretty cool. I really like. I guess if you told me like you have to pick a favorite plot twist, I guess I'd go with a dark horse, and that would be Robert Burns' betrayal of Sam Gideon in Vanquish. I mean, the storyline, the whole plot and the characters of Vanquish is just like so over the top 90s action, 90s anime film. But it totally works for that game. And I thought that betrayal was pretty cool. I didn't really see that coming. Sin in the chat said, Bound by Steel is tied for my favorite Kratia track. Oh, now I have to know what it's tied with. Please put that in the chat, Sin. Question 18. What's your least favorite sequel of all time? Well, it depends on the medium you're talking about. Board games, probably the D&D Adventure Systems Wrath of Ashardalon. I thought that was pretty trash. Resident Evil 6 in the video game world, that game's pretty assy. Anime, SAO Season 2, to me was garbage. Yeah, those are probably my least favorite sequels. Send in the chat said, The Town of Parali. Ah, yes. So the outro for LionWing Talks. Yeah, I really liked The Town of Parali until we had the DLC track written, and now I'm blanking on the name. I think it's called Fields of White, Winter in Kratia, something like that. I should know. I came up with the name, but I don't. So that track came along, and I was like, ho. I don't know. Maybe this is my favorite Kratia track. So, someone is disagreeing with me about my least favorite sequels. Sin, you don't think you've heard that? You should have gotten your DLC pack already emailed to you. You should go check it out. It's in there. Last question for the community questions portion. What's a game that you wish you could localize but can't for whatever reason? The Goblin Slayer tabletop RPG. We actually talked with the original publishers back in 2019 about localizing that TRPG, and the dollars just weren't right, especially in 2019, especially with where Goblin Slayer was at that time and where it was heading. It was commanding top dollar. Let's just put it like that. So yeah, that's like my white whale, I think. That's my white whale. I think I've mentioned before here in some show, I'm fairly certain that when it comes to like tabletop games, like tabletop RPGs are like my favorite stuff. That's the top of the list. And then it's like, like competitive card games, cooperative card games, down to board games, and et cetera, et cetera. So having a tabletop RPG as my one white whale as LionWing president makes a lot of sense. Okay, so that's it for our community questions. Let's talk about project updates. Okay, Testament. First things first. So, the team and I have been going. Excuse me. The team and I have been going through our copies of the game. So Heather sent me a big box actually of like 6 Testament copies, I think. I got those last week. The team and I have been going through them just to look at various cards. I think we've got about 10. Actually, I think it's like less than 10, sub 10, maybe like 8 cards that need to be reprinted. It might be 10, actually. I can't remember. I've got it written down. 5 of those are 2 taunts and 2 fortresses, because one of the alternate arts was for taunt and fortress. Of course, we had to choose those, right? And those just happen to be the ones with the layer printing error. And then we've got to reprint Lunana's rank 5 card. And then the other 5 are various cards that both we caught and that the community caught. So I think it's 10 that we'll definitely need reprints on. Now there's room for like wording cleanup, wording clarification, but I don't think we're going to like reprint new cards just to clarify certain situations, and in some cases like edge case situations. Ultimately, it'll be Japanime who decides how this stuff gets out to people, but I can tell you that what we are able to do is we are going to be posting all of the cards that are going to be reprinted for people to be able to print off on their own. And they can make paste ups or however they want to do that, or if they just want to reference it, on their phone as they're playing the game, that's fine too. We've already done that with Lunana's rank 5 card. We're going to do that with the rest as well. So that's there. I don't know what Japanime is going to do about like the 4 stars, force tokens issue. I don't know. I haven't talked to them about that. And I don't know what they're going to want to do in terms of a larger fix for this. I'm assuming, and this has been my suggestion, and it's also been just a track record of theirs, and that is to issue physical reprints. How those reprints get to folks, I'm not sure. That's Japanime's role in all of this, and they have a history of doing kind of errata packs or reprint packs and then getting those to customers and always making sure they do right by the customer in those situations. They're really, really good at that. So like I'm not worried about being able to make things right, because we're going to be able to make things right. Now it's just making sure we catch everything so that when we make things right, it's right. Right? So that's where we're at with Testament. We did issue that big FAQ update on BGG. A number of questions there. I think like 17-ish questions or so that we answered. We're still waiting on a couple answers from Kuro to get back to us with, but for the most part, those questions have been answered. Hopefully people have checked that out. I am going to make that errata channel. I'm going to give Testament its own, or I'm going to make that errata category and give Testament its own channel. I will pin the link to that forum thread there. I'm also going to be creating a living doc just through Google Doc where I'm going to throw up the FAQ in case people don't want to have to go to like Board Game Geek to check out errata or whatever. Someone mentioned that actually in that thread that I created. So going to do that. And we'll also pin it in the Testament chat as well. So no worries there. So we'll get y'all taken care of. It's not ideal. But like, fuck, none of us can do anything about it now other than fix it and to, work hard for you all to make sure you get what you need to enjoy the game in the way that you want to and need to enjoy it. So we'll get you sorted out. Sin in the chat said, okay, now I have to reevaluate. This song captures the whole winter aspect perfectly. Yeah, so that's again, that like, I think that's probably my favorite track that we've ever produced for any LionWing product. Although the Maid Knight Saga theme song that we just finished is pretty good. Pretty good. Okay. Cradia update. So we were expecting an update from Katie at Fun Again yesterday. We didn't get it, and we didn't get one today. Now, my guess is because of the long weekend, they're probably backed up a little bit. I mean, shit, fulfillment centers are backed up right now without a holiday bleeding into the week. But that means they're especially backed up when a holiday does bleed into the week. So I guess I'm not terribly shocked that we haven't heard from them. I reached out to Petra, who is kind of the middle person between us and Fun Again, who I hired specifically to handle logistics for Wild Hunt Festival and Gun and Embryo Machine and our projects going forward. But I reached out to her again today just to see if she had heard anything, because oftentimes she'll get something before I will. And as of 5:30 this evening, she had not heard anything. So I suspect we will get an update from them tomorrow or Friday with where we're at. If I had to guess, we've cleared customs, and the packages in the U.S. anyway are en route to their destination for the EU, for our EU folks. For our EU folks, my guess is they've already arrived at the destination since they were en route to the destination last week. Whether or not they've been like inventoried yet, I'm not sure. In Australia, I would imagine is getting ready to ship any day now since they were inventoried last week. So that's where we're at with Wild Hunt Festival. I don't really have any other updates with Wild Hunt Festival other than we are going to be running an event for Wild Hunt Festival. I think that's the first time that I've really made mention of that in an official capacity. I'm not ready to talk about what those details are just yet, but we will be running one for Wild Hunt Festival, so stay tuned for that. Gun and Gun. Gun and Gun, so if you tuned into last week's show, you saw our second round of proofs, which came back exactly as I wanted them to. So I gave our printer the go ahead. Was that Friday? I think it was Friday. I gave them the go ahead Friday to begin prepping for mass production. So I think we'll probably go into mass production. Well, it could be the very end of this week. It could be next week sometime, but it'll be soon. As soon as we get into mass production, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to post about it in Discord and also on the Gun and Gun campaign page. It's been a long time coming, for Gun and Gun. I really wanted to make sure we got things right. That's why I ordered a second round of proofs. It kind of cost me an arm and a leg to do it, but it was the right call because that second round of proofs was exactly what I wanted. Now, we did go back when I said, hey, let's go to mass production. I did slide in one quick change. I'm not going to say what that is. You'll have to wait till your final product comes out. It was a small one, but I think you'll like it. But yeah, so it's been a long time coming, but I really wanted to get Gun and Gun right. I mean, you want to get every game right, but I needed that second round of proofs to feel comfortable. I would not have felt comfortable pushing forward with those first round of proofs or requesting changes and then not getting a second round of physical production samples. I really needed those. I mean, clearly it would have been fine because all the production samples came back exactly as I wanted them to, but you never know, right? So that's where Gun and Gun is. Not ready to talk about the Gun and Gun Virtual League just yet. The Gun and Gun Virtual League will be kicking off later this summer. When we get closer, we'll talk about what that really looks like. We've been thinking on some ways to make that league interesting and to ensure that you can have the most amount of fun that you can possibly have with that. I think we learned some things from Operation Bulletstorm, our tournament that took place a couple weeks ago, and we're going to apply those lessons to the virtual league, which will be good, because there's more stuff that's going to happen with the virtual league, like Embryo Machine and some future games. And so getting the virtual league right is important. We'll probably learn a lot from the first bit of the virtual league too, that we will then carry with us to, make changes to or modify the structure at some point. So I'm not saying that we've got it all figured out with the virtual league and that it's going to pop off swimmingly, but I think it'll pop off pretty well. And I think a lot of that's thanks to Operation Bulletstorm, which was as much about getting folks involved and excited and hype about the game as it was to teach us kind of what we are actually going to be dealing with when we're running competitive stuff for any of our games, namely Gun and Gun in this instance. So that's where we're at with Gun and Gun. Not a huge update, just because our biggest and best update was last week. Speaking of last week's update, Embryo Machine, we also had a big update for Embryo Machine last week, where we showed off our latest our latest model, our latest miniatures render. But some exciting news that's happened. Yeah, that's happened since then, I think, is that Tabletop Simulator has now been updated, which means you've got 2 new Embryo Machine units available to play. So that takes you to 4. So the new ones are Arachne and Gario, each with their pre-built decks, of course, with their standees as well. And also, when you take cards from the deck and put them into your hand, they don't fall endlessly through the bottom of the screen, which was a bug we were encountering with the original Embryo Machine demo on TTS. So if you've been looking to get down on some competitive LionWing games and you either haven't wanted to jump into Gun and Gun, or it's not your thing, check out Embryo Machine. Or if you've gotten your fix of Gun and Gun for the time being, you still want to play some of our games competitively, jump into the Tabletop Simulator version of Embryo Machine. Start playing there. We are going to be adding more and more to that version over time. There's not going to be a long period of time like there was between the original release of the TTS version of Embryo Machine and what we just posted over the weekend to that version. You're going to see kind of slow updates, adding more stuff, whether that's more mechs, more cards, more battlefields, more battlefield components, that kind of thing. So we're going to keep kind of building that out and making it a more robust version of what's there already. But at least right now, you've got 4 EMs to fuck around with, 4 decks, and a battlefield to go at it with. Fornice is still missing from TTS. Yes, Frank, I know you kept slyly suggesting / encouraging me to include that in the latest update. And I did not take that suggestion, but Fornice will be in a future update. He has to, right? Because like Fornice is that's my dude. Oops, hit the mic again. Apparently that's a thing tonight with me. Fornice is my favorite mech in the game, so Fornice will be added to TTS sooner rather than later. I bet now it's coming last. No, it won't come last. It won't come last. And I don't even think it was the mech that was picked the last either when it came to the survey that I put out for folks. I think Hystrix took last place. So I think... No. Visner took last place, and then Hystrix, and then Fornice. So he was 3rd from the bottom, so he's fine. He's not getting last place. You can bank on that. Let's see here. Sin, you said, do we have the map yet? Oh... I don't know when you sent that, and I have no idea what you're talking about. Please provide further specificity, Sin. While you do that, that's my last update on Embryo Machine. Maiden Knight Saga. So we're not ready to reveal a ton yet about Maiden Knight Saga. That'll come as soon as... We'll be talking about our next project as soon as orders are fulfilled with Wild Hunt Festival. I will say this. There is a possibility this is not set in stone. And if I haven't blasted it out in writing, it's not 100% yet. There's a possibility that we move Maiden Knight Saga's campaign a little bit. For very good reasons that I think people will be quite happy with. None of this is confirmed. We're still doing some stuff to see if this thing is possible. But if it's possible, then we will move back the Kickstarter to ensure that we can include it. Now, of course, anytime you hear oh, I'm really looking forward to this thing, and now it's going to come a little bit later than I was anticipating. And I do emphasize a little bit later. This isn't going to be a huge delay, but a little bit later. But it's for a very cool reason. It's not set in stone. Maiden Knight Saga could still jump off in early July. That is a very, very real possibility. But, if we can do something to make the game even better, we want to be able to present the game in the best light possible. The first day, the first minute that the campaign launches. So you always want to put your best foot forward. And if that means we got to push it back a little bit, we might do that. The truth is, here's how the rest of 2021 is going to go for us. We're going to have a campaign in July. We're having a campaign in July one way or the other. It's going to be Midnight Saga. It's going to be something else. And then we're going to have a campaign in September. It'll be the quickest campaign turnaround that we've had so far. And then we've got the potential for our non-Kickstarter project to happen a little bit later in the fall. That is very unconfirmed. So, either way, you're going to get 2 LionWing campaigns in the next 3 months. Probably a little bit over 3 months since we're just into June right now. And I can't say when in September because I don't know when in September that other campaign will go off. I don't know if it's going to be the early part of September or the late part, middle, whatever. But from now until the end of September, you'll get 2 campaigns from us. And that's just because of the 2 project types and how much work we've already done on both of those projects. Both of those projects, well, one project is done, like done. So yeah, we're able to put them pretty close to one another, which will be cool. Which will mean we will then hit another campaign in shooting for January. So it'll be July, September, January, April/May. Those are our next 4. So we're gonna ratchet up the release schedule a little bit, especially with COVID wreaking less havoc on things. Shipping lanes getting back to something that resembles normality. Printing companies getting back to schedules that somewhat represent normality. Fulfillment centers getting back to fulfilling things in a time frame that somewhat represent normality. It's easier to get back onto a faster track for producing stuff and getting it into people's hands. And we've just really, with 2020 and also with 2021, we've just been really busy doing stuff behind the scenes, more so than we've ever been in terms of developing. As I mentioned before, we've had multiple projects in development at the same time, which is something that, was not happening mid 2020. So we're just able to bring a lot more stuff to Kickstarter because a lot of it's kind of just like waiting. So those are our updates. I'm looking at the clock here. I see 1 hour and 8 minutes, which means we're going to get very, very close to that 1 hour and 15 minutes that I was hoping for. Let me look over the chat one more time here. Okay, so Sin says he was talking about the new EM board. So we do not have the new map yet for Embryo Machine Tabletop Simulator version, but that will be coming because then you'll be able to play 2v2, which I know people are stoked about. Unless you're talking about the new EM board for Lone Wolf mode, which it looks like you might be. No news yet on that. I mean, I feel like I've been saying the same thing for 4 weeks now, and it's taking a long time, and I'm not quite sure what's taking so long to get that final Lone Wolf, or not Lone Wolf, the final stretch goal map illustrated for Embryo Machine. That's the only thing we're waiting on. We're basically done with the game. We're doing our final implementation of everything currently. We're just waiting on that one map. Yeah, but there isn't like for Lone Wolf modes, and I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. There's not like a specific board for Lone Wolf mode. Now there are specific cards for Lone Wolf mode that are exclusive to that mode specifically, but no real board. You can play Lone Wolf mode on any map in the game. Mox said, hype. I'm guessing, Mox, you were talking about my teasers for what's happening with Midnight Saga. Hype indeed. Hype indeed. No promises. This may not even work out. But it also might work out, which would be hype. Get your wallets ready, folks, says Sen. Yeah, maybe. Oh, Frank, is Lone Wolf coming to Tabletop Simulator? Yes, eventually it will be. Absolutely. There's less of a push to get Lone Wolf mode on the Tabletop Simulator, just because, part of Tabletop Simulator being a part of all of our games that we've put on Kickstarter so far is because people have not been able to get together with other people in physical spaces because of COVID. By the time you get Embryo Machine, at least for the US, my hope is that we're pretty well on our road to recovery. I mean, I hope that's the case for everyone in the world, but I also know that it's not what's happening right now, and it does not look like everyone's on the same road to recovery. So I can only speak about this country because it's the only one I live in. With things looking better as we're on the road to recovery, even if they weren't, though, you'd be able to play Lone Wolf mode by yourself with the physical components. And so Tabletop Simulator was really there to allow people to connect in a way that they couldn't over the past year or so. But Lone Wolf mode will be coming to Tabletop Simulator. It'll probably be like the last thing we add, though. How and when that falls in relation to like you all getting the games, I don't know. I mean, it might be a situation where like Lone Wolf mode comes in like November, then you all get your games in December. I just don't know what the roadmap looks like quite yet for Lone Wolf mode being added to the Tabletop Simulator demo. As I've mentioned before, in the comments and the updates and Discord on here, like Lone Wolf mode is not just some like slapdash shitty little solo mode that we added like at the very last minute. Yes, we added it via a stretch goal, but it was well thought out, and it comes with its own. I don't even remember how long the rules are for that. Something like 5 pages or so, and it's like single spaced, right? So there's real substance to that mode, and it also comes with a host of its own cards. So there's a lot there, which means you got to put in a little bit more work for it to work in Tabletop Simulator. But it will be coming, Frank. Absolutely. Max in the chat says, yes, very excited about anything Midnight Saga. Yes, we are too. We just finished up most of the Kickstarter graphics for Midnight Saga. So we're kind of like nearing the end of everything for Midnight Saga. Minus this one thing, which is kind of a big thing. So yes, we are very excited. Working hard on that. Which is also why I haven't been super present in Discord lately, other than just kind of like sniping certain conversations and jumping in when I can. Just because, as I mentioned, like the month leading up to a Kickstarter really is like, it's like a little bit of crunch. At least it is for me, just because I wear so many hats that, I am working until 1 a.m. many nights, or 1:30 in some cases. And that'll probably extend here a little bit as we get ready for the next launch. That's just the way it goes. Rogue said, finally able to jump on for LionWing Talks. Yes, for the last like couple minutes, because I'm basically out of stuff to talk about, Rogue. We just went through everything. That means it's not 2 hours tonight. I am a little sick with some allergies. So like my voice has been pretty much going since I started talking tonight. I'm a little stuffed up, so I don't feel super good right now. But if you live in the Midwest, but especially if you live in Ohio, and especially if you live in this valley that we call Cincinnati, you know what it's like to deal with allergies this time of year, every year for your entire life. So it's nothing new, but whoo, does it suck. At least, as you said, Rogue, at least when I upload this, I won't be uploading 60 gigs of video, which is what I've basically had to do. It's what I had to do last week and maybe the week before. Yeah, I think it was the week before as well. So those have been some long uploads. Tonight will not be a long upload. We're at an hour and 14 minutes, which is pretty much exactly where I wanted to be. I'm sorry you came in at the last minute, Rogue. But I really am done for tonight. I can't think of anything else that I really need to talk about other than to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to people who have been very talkative in the Testament channel in our Discord. Lots of good conversation happening there. Conversation about many things. People catching things or asking questions for clarity, but then also people just talking about party builds, what their strategy, tactics, what they're doing that's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. It's always cool to see that. I love seeing people post pictures of their party setups. That's like my favorite thing to see. I can't wait to see that with Wild Hunt Festival. I love seeing that kind of thing. I love seeing all the chatter over in Testament. I'm sorry that I haven't been as active in that channel or really in any channel lately again, just due to the July Kickstarter. But yeah, I appreciate everyone joining the Discord. We've had just a shit ton of new people join, and it's thanks to Testament, I suppose, or I suspect that'll also happen with Wild Hunt Festival, because I will be pushing the Discord once copies start getting into people's hands, because people are going to want to talk about it, right? No better place to do it than in a place that's specifically designed to talk about it. So I appreciate and love seeing all the new faces, seeing all the new conversations. I've even seen, it's interesting. I look at the Discord, and a lot of people who have shown up recently have just kind of stuck to the Testament chat, because that's what's brought them there. And there's other people talking about Testament. That's where they want to stay. But I have seen a couple folks kind of, ease their way into some of the other channels. Because we have a pretty tight group of people in our chat, people who have been around now for months and months and months. So I think that probably can be a little intimidating if you're new to a server, to see all these other people who clearly have been talking for a long time. They know one another, at least through the chat, to then kind of like figure out, navigate, how can I get into that conversation? But some people are willing to do it. And I've seen a couple of them, 2, 3, maybe 4 people who I've seen kind of branch out into other categories, other channels in the server. So that's been really cool to see as well. I love seeing the community grow. I love seeing the community connect. And that's ultimately what LionWing Talks is all about, is connecting with the community, me connecting with you, especially lately, since I haven't been super accessible in the chat. Roll the clock back by 6 months, and I was in the chat a lot, right? Talking not just about LionWing games, but just about anything. And that has not been the case lately. And that's just because we've got so many things kind of all hitting at once. I knew this summer was going to be busy for LionWing. I wasn't necessarily anticipating it being as busy as it is. So it's pulled me away from being able to engage in real meaningful ways, or even just in silly ways. So I want to get back to that, but this show is also an opportunity to kind of make up for the fact that I haven't really been in the chat a ton, engaging. I am watching though. I am reading. It's always up. It's always up on the screen. This is my vertical screen that I'm looking into right now. It's always up on this screen. But my other two are usually work stuff. But I'm always kind of just glancing, seeing what's going on, seeing if I need to address something. Sometimes I have to address something quickly. Or you catch me right as I'm like finishing up one thing and I'm like, I can respond to something real quick. Anyway, yeah, that's I appreciate everyone being in the chat and helping foster the LionWing community. It's really cool as a new company to see people come together and talk. That's why I wanted this Discord in the first place. Anyway, yes, Rogue, you did make it for the outro, which means you get to hear the town of Parali, which I believe is track 2 off of the Wild Hunt Festival OST, though it might be track 3. Some people would say the outro is a real bop. Sin Theory in the chat, I know, has gone on record to say it's a real bop. And you're about to hear this real bop, because I'm done here tonight. Thanks, folks. We'll be back again next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us on Monday for LionWing Plays, where we're going to be playing some Embryo Machine, which we haven't played on stream yet. So it'll be a first. Join us then. Same time, 9 p.m., same channel on Twitch. Takes place on Mondays, not Wednesdays. But if you can't make it then, come back this time next week for the next episode, which will be episode 19 of LionWing Talks. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you next time.